Welcome to Unexpectedly Successful. Join us to hear the raw and genuine stories of women founders who have created their own pathways to possibilities. Welcome to my audience to another yet amazing episode of Unexpectedly Successful. And today we have this super amazing big shot, Shinia Lambert, and I'm gonna brag a little bit about Sheena, and she's like super humble and gentle, and you'll hear her just in a little bit. So Sheena is an attorney. She was assistant attorney general in the state of Texas for 6 years before she joined a law firm as a partner, and she'll tell us a little bit about that story back in 2019. And I don't know about you guys, but lawyers just on its own is hard to be there. To become an assistant attorney general for the state of Texas. So, state of Texas, you don't have to say more. And being a female in that role is just amazing. And then becoming a partner. So not only that, Sheena has been busy on her own time besides law firm is concerned. She has a couple of items going on. Her own podcast, which is the name of it, Real People, Real Issues, and Real Growth. And she started this in January 2022. She also has a Capital Mom Facebook support group, and she started this in 2021, leading to a book publication in December of 2022. And she'll give us all the details, but she also has met an important milestone, which is now making more revenue, more than double the revenue that she had as a salary as an assistant attorney general. So we're not going to go into those nitty gritty numbers right now, but I am so happy to have with us Shinia Lambert. How are you doing, Sheena? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
I am so excited to get going in this conversation because you're filled with insights and stories, I'm sure. So Sheena, the first question. What does it mean for you to be Sheena?
I think, gosh, that's a good question. I think for me now at my ripe age of 41, where I've come to know myself a little bit better, that answer would be totally different than what I would have said at like 18, 19, 20, when I now know I was a baby and knew nothing, right? So for me to be confident in my identity, first of all, is my identity in Christ, learning who I am through his eyes, which has shaped everything for me once I put on his perspective as it pertains to me. But most importantly, besides that, it is being confident in my calling and what it is that I have been created to do. I think that everything that concerns me, my peace, my place where I'm located, the way I take care of myself, my personal health, everything is centered around God's purpose for my life. When that is solidified, it helps me to walk more assuredly every day. So who Shinia is and how she shows up in these different roles as an attorney, as a mom, as an entrepreneur, all of those things are great. Those are just different roles that I play. But who I am at my core is who Christ has revealed me to be, which is a fearful and wonderful creation according to him.
You also said that you were most excited about finding your voice and then serving to empower women in their own journey. And then a very important piece is to prevent yourself from comparing yourself to others, and that being something more common among women. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Capital Moms was started as a way to encourage, educate, and empower mom entrepreneurs. Now, the information that we provide through our book and our social media page is something that across the board will benefit everyone. But the idea was that it would be centered around women who are trying to find that balance between entrepreneurship and in their roles as mothers. And we believe that you can operate fully in both, and you don't have to kind of follow culture's idea that if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, entrepreneur, you have to forsake your husband or your children. Or if you're going to be a successful mom and wife, that means you can't really pursue entrepreneurship. We reject that idea completely. But one of the challenges that women really do face is this idea of comparison. That if I'm a good mom, then that means I need to look like all the moms I see posting these pictures on social media. Or if I'm a great entrepreneur, that means I need to be pulling in the revenue and having the connections and all the opportunities that I see everyone else having. And so the way that we have managed to promote this idea that you can be responsibly selfish, and that's something I can talk about a little bit more later if you'd like, but this idea that you can embrace your main character energy, being responsibly selfish, and operate fully in your roles in a way that feels good to you.
Sheena, how have you gotten to this point with that confidence, that clarity, that sense of, I mean, you're a busy woman.
Yeah.
How do you make it happen? Like, how am I not like, oh my God, I want to be like Sheena, and I, how do you do it?
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. One of the pivotal points in my life that made me realize I was capable of so much more than I thought is when I became a single mom. In 2012, I had my son, and I was 30 years old at the time. And so I was already an attorney. I was established. I was doing okay. And I felt like my whole world was falling apart. Being a single mom was not something I had intended. It was not something that I desired. But it just was what it was at that moment. And I think that God sometimes places us in situations where we think we've given all that we've had, that we've done our very best. And then when you realize, like, I'm responsible, I've been entrusted with this life, where I'm not just raising a child, like I am investing in this person to help him understand who God has created him to be. It just revealed to me that I can get up earlier. I can work harder. I can do more. Now, was that always an enjoyable experience? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Having a newborn, working long hours, commuting back and forth, 3 hours a day to the city and back, like it was hard. But what it showed me is that if you need to do it, yes, you can. Yes, you absolutely can. And you can do it for as long as you need to do it. What it also showed me was how to not be afraid to set boundaries. So yes, while I can do a lot, I also allow myself the space now to say, do I want to? So when people see my schedule and they see like, oh, you're a partner, manage your own law firm, you're still practicing, you have your podcast, you're now going into coaching, you also have Capital Moms, you're speaking at events, like how do you do it? I say yes to the things I want to say yes to. And I don't have a problem saying no to things that don't align with what I feel called to do in that season. People pull on me all the time and want me to do things, and those things are worthy of being done, but I may not be the person to do them. And so although my schedule is packed 5 times busier than it used to be, I find myself less busy than when I worked a 9 to 5. And people are like, how does that make sense? Because now I'm aligned with my purpose. So although I'm busy, I'm doing the things I want to do. I have the passion and energy to do them versus just doing the things I felt like I had to do.
That was a lot of lessons learned there. So one of the things you said, Sheena, was you are less busy now than you were before when you had a 9 to 5. How do you define busy?
So I define busy as just having a lot of things on my calendar, right? When you think of having a to-do list, and some of us like feel productive or we feel good about ourselves if we're just checking things off the list. So busy is just doing things. Mm-hmm. Being productive is being effective. That means I'm being intentional about how I use my time in order to walk in the roles that God has called me to, in order to fulfill those obligations. So whereas I don't in any way disparage those who work a 9 to 5, because I did it for a long time and our world would not function without those who are in the marketplace working 9 to 5. So I'm not talking about the difference between being an entrepreneur and working for someone else. I'm talking about walking in your purpose, which may be working for someone else, and or just doing things because you think if you're busy that you're being productive.
Tell us, how did you have this crazy idea to leave that comfortable job with a lot of benefits, good salary? I mean, you were set. You were successful to the world's eyes, and then you said, "Okay, I'm gonna step in faith." And you said this on your website, and then go into this firm with all the uncertainty. So tell us, Tell us that process, and in the context of you being a single mom, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, that's huge. So in 2019, I was an assistant attorney general with the Office of the Attorney General Child Support Division in Texas. And I had been doing that for 6 years. And at the time, my boss was transitioning out and they were grooming me to take her position. So not only did I leave at a time where I was doing well, but I left at a time where I was being groomed for a promotion. And so God's divine timing is really what I can attribute all of it to, because I don't want to downplay that making a faith leap is still a scary thing. Even if you're trusting that everything's going to work out, it's terrifying. And being a single mom, someone who, that's not a dual income household, if this doesn't work, there's no one else there to supplement income.
Exactly.
Giving up having that insurance, giving up having that retirement plan, were things that I had to consider. And in the past, other private attorneys had tried to woo me away from the state and say, like, come partner with us, come work with us. And it just never felt right. And then in comes my business partner out of the blue, who I'd never met before. We sit down, have what I believe a God-ordained conversation. And I thought, there's something different about her. And so we started fasting, we started praying, we started having dinners together, spending time with each other's families, just like really getting to know each other outside of the workplace. And I realized that God did not call me to a law firm or to partner. He called me to my business partner, to a person. He had us linked together in partnership. So that's how, even though we started the firm together, it morphed into Capital Moms and it morphed into a book, because he didn't just call me to a specific job. Again, and that's the role I was playing in the beginning in 2019, but he called me to a purpose partner. And so that she has multiplied my life, and I hope I've done the same for her, but we've started to see some of the other seeds that God planted in each of us individually take root and start to bloom. But again, I will never downplay the largeness of making a faith leap and faith decision. So I don't, again, disparage anyone who doesn't feel like they're ready yet, but I will say you're never going to feel like you're ready. It's never going to feel like the right time, even if you're 100% confident. Because my support system, also knowing that I'm a single mom, knowing the very real challenges of entrepreneurship, were like, are you sure? And these are people who love me, right? They care about me. So they're like, are you sure this is what God's telling you to do? Are you sure? And I had to step out alone. I couldn't rely on other people saying like, yeah, this is a really great idea. They were like, no, are you going to be good?
The doubts placed on that next step.
And so again, that's why you also have to know that in these doors that God is opening, not only is it the right time, but are you partnering with the right people? Because it had to have been Ebony. It had to have been her, because God had already placed certain things on her heart that allowed me to make that transition as smoothly as possible. And so while I was making a sacrifice leaving this job, she was also making a sacrifice and partnering with someone where she wasn't requiring like any money down. She wasn't requiring for me, like she brought me on as 50-50 owner of this firm, and she didn't have to do that. So again, it was just the right timing and the right person.
Wow. So, Sheena, can you recall, you said you don't want to downplay that, those emotions and feelings of making that decision. Can you recall what was that, and describe it for us?
Yeah, there's a chapter in our book, chapter 10, that talks about fear. And that was probably the overarching decision. It wasn't fear that I didn't have the skill set. It wasn't fear that I couldn't get caught up, that I couldn't understand. Because remember, I was coming from a family law background, and I was jumping into business, church, and nonprofit. So I wasn't even afraid of the learning curve. It was the fear of, am I doing an irresponsible thing, being that I'm a mother? Am I doing an irresponsible thing, being that I've invested, in this education, in this job, at a point where I'm up for a promotion, and they're invested in me, I'm invested in them. Am I somehow disrespecting that investment that they've made in them and leaving at this opportune time? What about the people that have been underneath me there that desire for me to stay? What's my responsibility and obligation to them? Am I neglecting what God entrusted to me in that season? There were so many fears of just, am I making the right choice? Do I have the right to say that this is what I want, even though I'm needed in another way? Am I selfish for prioritizing my desires when at that point, for the past 7 years, everything had been about my son. Everything had been about him. So it felt very different to think about, what does Shania want? What is God saying to me about me? Not as a mom, not as an attorney. What is his goal and direction for me in this season? So there were sleepless nights, of course. There were many tears. There were, you know, so many emotions tied up in it, and trying to feel like it's okay if someone isn't affirming this choice. That was hard because my parents, who love me very much, were just like, don't do this. Like, what are you doing? You're making six figures. You're up for a promotion. Like, you're giving up retirement, and like, you have a child. Don't do this. Um, and so it's hard. It was very difficult. But what that season showed me is that I will prioritize what God tells me to do.
Sheena, did you feel guilty on making all these decisions?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of guilt there because when you first make the decision, you don't know how it's going to turn out, right? I had to resign within myself that if this is like an Abraham Isaac situation where I just have to make the decision so God knows that I'm willing to sacrifice whatever it is I think I want most, and it doesn't pan out the way I thought, I have to be okay with that. There was a lot of guilt in feeling like you don't have the right to pursue what you want when you have a child who's dependent upon you. Like, you gave up that right when you became a single mom.
Wow. I mean, that burden, like you did something wrong and now you have to pay for it. Wow.
Right, like you may find some enjoyment, you may have some highlights in your life, but this whole idea that you still have like a plan and a purpose, you forsake that when you did what you did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the enemy is stealthy. Yeah, like he wreaked havoc on my mind. And so I felt like this was a way that God pulled me out of that pit and was like, don't you ever think that whatever you did could overcome the good I have for you. Like, you can't do enough bad to overcome the plans that I have for you. Like, stop it.
And your purpose and what you were created to be, like that, going back to your initial response. Wow.
But now I can also see how all of those things, the things that I felt like set me back, actually set me up, because there would be no capital moms if I wasn't a mom. Like, if I didn't know the struggles of being a single mom going to entrepreneurship, there would be no capital moms. There would be no book. There would be no wealth of experience for me to pull from. I wouldn't be able to relate to other people. Like, especially with me practicing family law, that's one of the comments that I got all the time. Like, working for the state of Texas, the primary intention is monetary, right? The child support division collects child support because that funds the rest of these ventures that the state has, right? That child support is a money-making tool for the state. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's how the government is set up. It's fine. But that is their primary tool. So they're not always the most compassionate. They're not always the most understanding. They see people often as just another case, right? So when people would say to me, like, you talk to me like I'm a person, you're listening to me. Like, you understand that this is about my child, not just a monetary amount, right? Those kind of things resonated with me. But the reason why, Griselda, I had the opportunity to show compassion is because I went through the child support system before I worked for them, right? So I understood how even going in there and not fighting with my son's father, having a fairly stable relationship, you walk into that courtroom and you feel like a stereotype, especially being a woman of color. So I could then show the same empathy to them that I wish I had been shown.
You know, Sheena, as you're describing yourself, like walking into this courtroom, right? And you are a stereotype. That's what the system made you feel, and the culture and all of this. But I want to remind our audience that you were already an established attorney.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy how it so contrasting.
It's one of those things that in that moment you realize it doesn't matter what you have attained, even in the world's eyes, as a woman of color, you're still degraded to a point often that you're just a stereotype, right? So when I sat down to negotiate my case, they don't know what I do for a living, right? So when I start asking certain questions, advocating for myself in a certain way, they're like, what do you do? Oh, I'm an attorney as well. And so
Wow.
like, oh. And so this is how funny God is because the attorney that negotiated my case that day, who was extremely condescending, um, when I went to go interview to work for the state 6 months later, she
Oh, and it says she.
yeah, it was a she, right? But she had right, and so she, in our conversation or negotiation, which is very short, just very clipped, condescending, and so I was working in Austin at the time for another state agency, and I just thought like, I don't know, I'm ready to do something different, God, like show me an open door. And so I applied for a job with the Office of the Attorney General as an Assistant Attorney General, but I hadn't heard anything for months. Like I'd pretty much given up on it. And then I get a phone call that there's an interview. Now, the reason why this is important is because when I had my child support case, I lived in one county, in Williamson County, but my interview was in Bell County, which is where I now currently reside. So I've been commuting back and forth an hour every day to go to Austin. So when I got the interview, I walk into the interview room, and who do I see but that attorney that negotiated my case the year prior? And she's now the boss at this new place. So I'm thinking, well, there's no way I'm going to get this job. One, I don't have a family law background. And two, if she remembers me from then, she wasn't very kind to me. Not only do I get the job, Griselda, okay, this is how God works. Not only do I get the job, it was a definite pay increase. But then after I'd been there only 6 months, I know nothing, okay? I know nothing. They're like, hey, we want to try a new situation where we open up a satellite office in your town so you don't have to commute anymore, and we want you to run that office. So you'll have a staff underneath you. And I'm like, wait, I know nothing. Like, there will be no other attorneys there. You'll be the only attorney in that office. You'll have a staff underneath you, and you're going to be the first like it in the state. The state has never done this before. And I was like...
So was this person your direct supervisor?
And that person became my direct supervisor. And so that's the one who 6 years later, when she was transitioning out, they wanted to groom me to take her place. And that at that point, when everyone just thought, oh, this is the natural progression. So when I didn't apply for it, they were like, why didn't you apply? And so they pulled me aside and were like, because I hadn't told anyone yet. I hadn't given my notice yet. So they pulled me aside and were like, hey, we can't tell you that if you apply, you're going to get it. But like, if you apply, you're going to get it. So I was just like, I mean, to the point where like the big boss, her boss, came down and like cornered me in the parking lot. It was like, hey, why haven't you applied for this job? What's going on? And so eventually at that point, I was like, okay, Lord, I think I have to tell them that like I intend on leaving in a month because...
Wow. Okay, so just summarizing that chapter, you go to court for child support. The person who's helping you or representing you is condescending. 6 months later, you go into a job interview. She is the one to hire you. She's the one to help you groom to basically replace herself. And then you are leading charge for a new model in law practice within the general attorney's office.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then now they're begging you to stay because you were the perfect candidate to take over next. What an incredible journey. Sheena, what did you do before that?
So before I worked for the Office of the Attorney General, I worked for the Texas Workforce Commission, State Office of Appeal. So I was an administrative law judge. So basically, if someone lost their job or was fired and applied for unemployment benefits and they were denied and then they appealed, then it would come before me and I would have a hearing and make an ultimate ruling on whether they would be awarded benefits or not. I enjoyed that job greatly. And I felt like it allowed me a chance, again, to connect with people. I would never have considered myself like a people person. But then through these different roles that God gave me, I just found that it grew compassion and empathy in a way that prior life experiences. Growing up as an only child, like I didn't have siblings to like wrestle with and figure things out. Military brat, so we moved from place to place. So I was able to develop and disconnect from people very quickly. So it became hard for me to be someone who really invested and was vulnerable when it came to relationships. And so it's funny that during my work is how God showed me how to have compassion and empathy. And then obviously through being a mother, he continued to nurture that. But
so Sheena, you talked about your childhood. Tell us a little bit about those early days. Like, how did you become a lawyer? Like, what is the context that has led to this amazing, wonderful woman, professional mother, entrepreneur, all of these roles? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was a military brat. My dad was in the military. My parents met very young. They met in the second grade. They got married right out of high school. Very small towns, yeah, in Virginia. So they've known each other a long time. Very country family, very humble beginnings. And so my dad joined the military when he was 19. My mom was 17. And I think their very first duty station was overseas to Germany. These are two kids who've never left the state, never left the United States, and they go to Germany. And so we had the experience over there, stayed there for a few years, bounced around Washington, back to Virginia, went to Alaska, and then from Alaska to Texas. So two total extremes. And so I came
Yes.
to Texas in 96, graduated from high school here, went to college in Texas. And then when I enrolled in college, I had no intentions of being an attorney. It wasn't even on my radar. I wanted to go into computer science and website design. That's what I went to college for originally. And then in my sophomore year, I went home for Christmas break. And my mom was talking to a coworker, and she was talking about some struggles she was having on in her workplace and how she'd had to get an attorney involved. And when I was listening to that conversation, I just thought, how amazing would it be for someone to be facing a problem and be able to advocate for them? Like, not just feel sorry for them, not just to like pray for them and have well wishes, but like to be able to do something about the wrongs that you're seeing committed against other people. And so I talked to my mom and I was like, I think I want to change my major. And she was like, girl, you're already a year and a half in. I was on full scholarship. So it's like after those 4 years, my scholarship was going to be over. So she's like, what? How are you going to do that? Because my school required that if you changed your major to like political science, which was the closest thing they had to pre-law, you had to add a minor onto it. So that meant, additional hours. She was like, how are you going to get all of these done in 4 years? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. So I went back,
Wow.
changed my major. And so every semester after that, they were like, you should only take about 15 credit hours. I was like, no, load it up as many as I can take. So every semester I would take between 18 to 22 credit hours so I could make sure I graduated on time. So when I graduated, I thought I'm going to take the LSAT, which decides like what school you get entered into. And the schools that I applied to, I was rejected. And so I was devastated. Like, no, I want to move to New York, go to Columbia, and become a famous entertainment law attorney. I don't understand.
Wow. Entertainment law attorney. Okay.
I went home and I told my parents, like, if I can't go to the school I want to go to, like, I'm just going to take a year off. Like, I'm just going to work. I don't care where it is. I'm just going to earn money. And they were just kind of like, no, like that's not a wise idea. And I was like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I haven't gotten into the school that I want to go to, and I'm just going to work. And they were so afraid that, like, you're going to get a job and you're going to get into the routine of having a job and you're not going to do what it says you feel called to do. So one day I get a phone call from a law school, a Christian law school in Virginia, which is where I'm from. And they were like, hey, have you ever heard of our school? Are you interested in coming to tour? Are you interested in coming? Because we'll give you an out-of-state scholarship. And I was just like, I don't know. And then I looked up their school and I was like, wow, like I didn't even know like a Christian law school existed. And so now, mind you, it was very right wing conservative, very different from my religious upbringing. Yes, and so if Pat Robertson 700 Club, it was his law school on his campus in Virginia Beach. So again, very right wing, very white, very conservative. I came from Texas, where I went to a historically black college and university, where everyone looked like me, thought like me, moved like me. And so then being a black female positioned in a school with people whose views were very different than mine, their expression of their views very different than mine. Again, God used that to learn this is how you have a voice. This is how you articulate yourself. This is how you advocate for yourself in environments where people don't look like you, think like you, believe like you.
So, Sheena, you did go to this Christian law school with full scholarship. You graduated and you were learning all of these skills to advocate for yourself, to navigate really strange spaces, right? Really for you. And then you were back in Texas.
Which was odd because, again, this is why you cannot put God in a box and think that everything is going to be like 2 + 2 = 4. God's like, I don't do math like that. Like, I multiply, I don't add. Because I was thinking, okay, Lord, if you called me to this law school in Virginia Beach, why then do you want me to go back to Texas? Why didn't you just open a door for a law school in Texas? Like, it doesn't make any sense. This is too hard. And you wouldn't have been, I would not have been challenged though, had I stayed near home. The way it was to move to another state without the safety net of my parents, without having that cushion, without having any friends there, having to navigate, like, this is what life is like as a big girl. So, go do it.
Wow, wow. So, Sheena, this is a good segue. What has been one of your biggest fearful moments in this amazing, powerful, diverse, strange journey of yours leading to this moment?
I think one of my biggest fearful moments is the idea that I will take God's grace for granted and I'll become complacent. That what is working, that I'll decide that that's good enough. When God is like, no, that I'll get comfortable. I think that is where, when there's a struggle and you feel like you're just really wrestling with something, that kind of fans the flame, the passion within you to fight. It's hard to muster up a fight when everything's going well, right? You're earning good money. You have control of your schedule. And then when God's like, hey, I want you to do something different, it's like, wait a minute. I don't want to rock the boat.
Yes, yes.
I mean, another very real fear, of course, is that I'm going to mismanage somehow what God's giving me. I'm going to hear wrong. My discernment's going to get off, and that won't only affect me, but those that He's entrusted to me. That was the same fear when I decided to go into private practice. Like, Lord, you've given me this child that I'm responsible for. I want to make sure I'm making the right decisions.
How do you fight those fears?
Honestly, day by day, when I think about, okay, what is it that you want to reap? So every day I ask myself, what are you planting today? Right? If this is what you want to reap tomorrow, what are you planting today? Because you can't just talk about it, right? You can't just really hope for it. You can't just pray about it. Like, my faith has to have feet. Like, so if you're believing God for that, then what are you doing today that shows that you believe that God's going to do this tomorrow, right? So I have to just kind of tell myself day by day and release myself of the expectations of what I think my life is supposed to look like. That word supposed to, like, it's a trap.
That is so cool. It's like, I don't know, because I don't know how I got here to begin with. So why not?
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. Like, I try to be a good steward of what God has given me. I try to be effective. I try to be purposeful. But I also understand that I'm not in control.
That is so powerful. I mean, you taking the spiritual intelligence you're talking about, I could say, Sheena has it all together. She's a powerful, intelligent, wise woman, and then here you say, I know I'm not in control. That is such a powerful, and to be honest, shocking response from you, because I mean, we're not used to that. We're not used to hearing successful people saying that.
And I hope that helps to free someone else who's listening, is that if your idea of success is tied to control, like, release yourself from that. Be purposeful, be intentional, but know that you are not in control of your circumstances, of what happens around you, God's will and plan for you. All you can rest in is knowing that His plan is good, that it's perfect, right? And that even those bad things that you're like, why is this happening, can all be worked together for your good.
What role does it play in your life to be a mom, Sheena, in all of these pieces that you've described? And like, what is it for you?
Being a mom, I will tell you, is my number one role, besides belonging to God, being a child of God. Like, you can strip me of the attorney, you can strip me of my businesses, but like, being a mom is everything, because I realize that is my legacy. Like, that is who I leave behind. The business may do well, be successful, carry on, that's fine. Coaching may do well, Capital Moms may do well, but the way that I'm invested in raising a godly young man is unmatched. Like, he is my highest priority. He comes second to nothing besides God.
Tell us about him. What is his name?
His name is Aiden.
Aiden. Tell us about Aiden.
Yeah, so he is not perfect by any means. He's in his pre-teenagery years, and he's a boy. But he is so kind and gracious and so forgiving. We had a conversation the other day, and I was telling him all the things that I would have done differently, knowing now what I know. When he was first born, I was struggling greatly with figuring out how do I do this? Like, how do I take care of this person and not just meet his physical needs like food, clothing, shelter, but like, how do I love him in a way that helps him to grow, that doesn't hinder him, that's not smothering? How do I love him in a way that's unconditional but still has standards? Like, these are things that I really struggled with. And one of the things that I prayed for, probably my most fervent prayer when I was pregnant, and I'm gonna cry. So probably one of the most fervent things that I prayed for when I was pregnant was that my son would come to know Jesus on his own at a young age. Now, it was my job that I was going to teach him and introduce him to Christ, but I wanted him to have a solid relationship with who Christ was on his own, not because I took him to church, not because I said, you will be a Christian. I wanted Jesus to reveal himself to my son in a way that was real. And I remember my son was 3 years old. We were driving in the car and he says to me from the back seat, how can I be saved? Now, when he was 6, of his own volition, he said, I'm ready to be baptized. And that for me was again confirmation, not that I ever doubted that God was real, but that God hears me and he answers my prayers. He is the epitome of love for me. He is how God shows love to me in the most pure and effective way.
I mean, another super contrast with where you say, I didn't choose to be pregnant and I don't know what I'm going to do being a mom. And then fast track to this amazing moment in which you're like, this is how God shows before me every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to encourage someone who feels like your life took a turn that you weren't expecting and you carry guilt or shame because you thought, if I really loved God, I wouldn't have done this, or I wouldn't have put myself in this position, or whatever it may be. Know that judgment, that's not God. That is the enemy's way. Guilt and shame are something totally different than godly sorrow. You can feel like you wish you might have made a different choice, and you may feel convicted, but God brings healing, where the enemy just brings accusation. So if you're under that weight of feeling like, I've done too much, no, you haven't. You can't outdo God's love for you, and everything he can work together for your good, but you just have to trust him.
So, Sheena, tell us tactics, hacks that you've put in place to break moments in which you've been there in that soundtrack, in that you've been stuck, you've been doubtful, you've been fearful, you've been shame, all of this. Tell us a hack, like one thing that our audience can do if they're in that place.
Yeah, this is going to sound so cliche, but there is nothing that replaces the truth of God's word. I have found that every single time that I have struggled with my identity, my purpose, with faith, with believing God, is I will notice that there's a pattern where I have not prioritized spending time in God's word. It is like a balm to any wound, but not just reading it, right? Like, once truth has been revealed, you have to do something with it. You have got to start applying it. It's not enough just to read it, to be inspired by it, or to get convicted and feel bad about it. You have to do something with it. Now, when it comes to practical things we can do, often that comes to play with being great guards of our minds and our thoughts. What are you spending your time thinking about? What kind of conversations are you having? What music are you listening to? What are you watching? How are you spending your time? We are with ourselves more than anyone else is around us, right? PD tells us that, like, you have 10 times more influence on yourself than anyone else. So how do you spend that time? Are you being a good gatekeeper over your thoughts? Because your brain is like a computer. It is a powerful machine, but it only outputs what you put in it.
Okay, so I'm going to take a turn here. As Sheena, as this amazing, powerful house lawyer of representing businesses, nonprofit, and churches, and she has a podcast, and she has a support group for moms, and then she's a published author. So tell us how all of these combine and how you make sense of this. Oh, and then spending time with your son, that is a top priority for you. So tell us a given day on Sheena's life.
It's honestly every day is different, and that's something I had to get used to because I found comfort in routine, which is one of the reasons why I think I thrived in a 9 to 5 because I knew what all of my days were going to look like. Now I try to map my weeks out, and there are certain things that I call white space that are just non-negotiable things that I have to do that other things don't get to conflict with. So, like for example, for this week, my son's birthday is on Thursday. So I already know, like, I'm taking cupcakes up to the school, I'm taking goodie bags, like that time's blocked out. In the evenings, he has extracurriculars, that time's blocked out. So it doesn't matter if more people want coaching or if someone wants me to attend an event, if it conflicts with the times that I already have mapped out for him, then it's a no-go. The things that I don't have control over, like sometimes when hearings are set with the court and when a judge wants me somewhere, then those things have flexibility. But my admin staff knows only schedule me for appointments on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays. Wednesdays and Fridays are my days. So Wednesdays are days that I normally am in the office focusing on all the admin work, drafting orders, doing those things, prepping for trial. And then Fridays are my personal development days. So those are the days I meet with my mentor. Those are the days that I'm, doing Daniel's Den content. Those are the days that I'm often filming my own content, researching for my podcast. So I have assigned certain days where I get tasks done. But I allow myself the freedom to be flexible because, again, I'm not in control. So if something pops up, it doesn't throw my day all the way off. I'm open to making adjustments. Having a great staff, having a business partner that's engaged, having a great support system means I can then call on other people to help me when things get hectic. But for the most part, like, to me, I know that people think like you do so much. I think a lot of my weeks are pretty low key. Like you said, sometimes we work longer hours, but I'm doing something that I enjoy. So yeah, while someone else may get off at 5 and they go home, for me, like, okay, my son's going to karate. That's when I'm going to outline my podcast. Like I'm still doing work outside of the traditional hours, but it doesn't always feel hard because I'm doing things that align with my purpose. Uh, so I think that's just the difference is I do a lot, but I do things I enjoy. So it doesn't always feel like work.
Sheena, what are the top 3 things that aspiring entrepreneurs need to take care of from the legal perspective if they are taking next steps in that direction?
Oh gosh. So if you're someone who's looking to go into entrepreneurship and you don't have your own business yet, then one of the things that I highly, highly recommend is just start out by doing basic research to familiarize yourself with business entity types, the different types of taxes, what a company agreement looks like, what an EIN looks like, why and when you may need one. If you're a nonprofit, what you would need to do to get tax exempt status. Now, this is when I talk about really kind of being honest with yourself about what your budget is going off into entrepreneurship. Now, everyone knows I made a faith leap and I didn't have like a reservoir of cash to pull from. So I always tell people in complete transparency, I'm telling you what's ideal, but understand if God is telling you to stretch and do something different, do what God says. Like forget what I say, do what God is telling you to do. But this is a time where you really want to think about, especially if you're partnering with someone, do we want to have legal counsel? Like for example, my law firm offers general counsel plans for small businesses, which is fairly unheard of because your big companies like Google, Sprint, etc., they have a legal team, right? Small businesses normally don't have that. They just have to kind of nickel and dime themselves along the way. Where my firm is like, no, we'll be your general counsel for a year and we'll take care of everything from forming your business to reviewing your contracts to doing negotiations for you so that you can focus on the good and service that you want to provide. So I would tell people consider maybe getting legal counsel to start off with. If you're in Texas, I can help you. If you're not in Texas, I can't help you.
So, Sheena, a year of legal advice and support, that sounds expensive.
It can be, however, the way we did it, because we really have a passion for small businesses, is we have a tiered program. And also the price will reflect how large your company is. So if you're just a one-person solo entrepreneur, your price is going to be farly more reduced than you coming on and you have 20 people because we're now providing services for your entire company, right? So we have a sliding scale based on the size of your business and what we project to be your growth within that year. But when we marked out, like if you were to hire us for each of these services individually, you're getting like a 70% discount based on just signing up for the whole year. But we do offer the individual services as well. In most states, you absolutely do not need legal counsel to form your business. But we suggest at least consulting with an attorney to have them review your documents to make sure you're doing it right. Because we've had so many people who've used like LegalZoom or done their paperwork on their own where they thought they were doing one thing and now realize 2 years in, like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to be doing quarterly reports. I didn't know the IRS wanted this. Like, I didn't know that meant I couldn't do this as a nonprofit. And we're trying to like unravel this knot that they've got into. So, number one would be consider getting legal counsel. Number two would also be very particular about who you partner with in business. We see so many people, and this comes from a legal standpoint because it ends up leading to litigation when relationships fall out. A lot of people want to partner with family or they want to partner with people they've known for a long time. And so there's nothing wrong with doing business with family, and there's nothing wrong with partnering with people that you've been friends with and known for a long time, but make sure that your visions align. Have you had the real conversation about where you believe God wants to take your business, what that step will look like? And again, sometimes it's just getting out what your intentions are and what the vision is. Now that can change. God can redirect you both, but you want to make sure you're on the same page. If one person is more, philanthropic and they're just wanting to give to the community, and you have a desire for that too, but you want to also earn profit, that's a conversation that needs to be had up front because those visions are not aligned. If you want a certain business entity type that has certain protections and the other person is like, I don't want that. I just want a general partnership. I don't want anything in writing. You guys got to talk about that, in the beginning. If one of you is for example, if you're a wife and a mother and the other is single, and she could be looking, to get married or have changes in her life, and while you're wanting to kind of settle down in one area and not, just have something steady, and she's like, no, I want to, a high trajectory. I want to go wherever, I want to go international. If that doesn't align, you guys got to have those conversations in the beginning. And then I would also say probably my third piece of advice that is legal but also has some other implications. And this is something that as women we don't talk about a lot, but what does rest and downtime look like for you? Because with my business partner and I, it's us. We're the two attorneys. So we can't both just be like, oh, we want to take the summer off. We can't do that. There's implications that come with that. Or what are you going to do if your partner gets sick or gets pregnant and they have to be out? Are you going to pay during that period of time? Do you guys have an agreement on how income is going to be split? That's huge. People go into business like, oh, we're going to split 50-50, but y'all aren't doing 50-50 work. One's doing 80% while they're, and taking home less than they've earned in the other. So having those difficult conversations, I would say think about legal counsel and the implications of going into business and understanding the pros and the cons. I would also talk about making sure you're partnering with the right person. And then 3, having those difficult conversations and outlining what rest looks like, what paid time off looks like, all of those little nuanced details that people think, oh, we'll figure it out after the business is started. No.
And Sheena, even for those who are not in partnerships, this is still so important, right? Because we still need to, again, to advocate for ourselves, to negotiate with what we want to do and define priorities and define the values of our business and say what rest looks for me, what rest looks for my business. And this is so cool. And have those tough conversations with ourselves and say, what is really your motivation and how are you going to compensate the trade-offs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. If you're in solo entrepreneurship, you really have to outline what does taking time off look like, because we often fall into that trap. Like, I can't take time off.
Yes.
Because if I'm not working, I'm not earning money. It can be very difficult to say like, no, I need a break. I need to have a break. Or to think about, okay, if I want to grow, what does that look like for me? What is my mission statement? What is my vision? Because if you can't clearly articulate that for yourself, there will be people who will come in and try to take advantage. Or you'll find yourself obligated to do what everyone else wants you to do because you're not sold out to what your mission, your vision is for your business.
Sheena, I have a very important question for this podcast. Were you expected to be successful as a businesswoman?
That depends on who you ask. I believed that I would be successful or God would not call me to it. Now, how I define success may be totally different from someone else, right? Someone else may say, if I'm not making seven figures, I'm not successful. Whereas for me, it was about, do I feel satisfied and fulfilled in what I'm doing day to day? But also, are my needs getting met? Like, am I paying bills, not going into debt? Do I feel purposeful and effective? So I knew I was going to be successful. Now, what did other people think? I don't know.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so on that, what are you most proud about this journey of business ownership?
Gosh, I think I'm proud of just the personal growth and development that has happened through entrepreneurship in the same way that like becoming a mother helped to shape me. Entrepreneurship definitely shaped me. I tell my business partner all the time, I'm not married, but desired to be. And I told her my partnership with you has taught me more about marriage than anything else that I've seen because you have to learn how to work with a different personality type. I tell everyone, like, I'm the anchor, she's the helium. Like, she's the dreamer, she comes with the ideas. I'm the one that says, hey, let's come up with a
Yes,
plan, right? And we need that.
yes.
We balance each other. And so I'm proud of, again, just the personal growth and development, entrepreneurship wise. Obviously, I'm proud of our growth income, like what we're pulling in and the fact that we're getting ready to expand into estate planning and legacy building. But
That's
but
awesome.
it's been a journey. And if you look if you looked at all the challenges that we had with COVID, I mean, we went into business in 2019, then COVID hit. Like, like with COVID, and then we had such a high turnover, with assistants and things that we had because they desired to go off to law school. Like they had dreams and things for themselves. And we were just trying to, we're like, who do we invest in? Her husband's active duty military. So my business partner now lives in Germany.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she moved there in May. So we're co-running this business internationally with a 7-hour time difference and
Wow.
all the challenges that come through that. But when I tell you again, financially, I have surpassed, even in this transition, what I was making when we thought this year was going to be our toughest year financially because she was going to be gone. And we didn't know what that would look like. But I've taken home more money in these months than I did before because I feel like God was like, let me show you what pressure can do. Like, I'm going to apply some pressure and let me show you what's in you that you thought you were already reaching your capacity. And I was like, oh, I can do that.
Tell us about your podcast. Tell us about your book. How can people get in touch with you for your legal services? You mentioned coaching. Tell us how people can get in touch with you for these multiple options.
So with the law firm, it's called Jackson, Todd and Lambert, PLLC. You can find us. Our website is jtlattorneys.com. Our Facebook group is JTL Attorneys. Instagram, JTL Attorneys. Like, that's our handle everywhere. And like I said, we do business, church, and nonprofit, but I also practice family law. So if you're in Texas and you absolutely need help with family law, I guess you can call.
Sheena is your girl.
But also we're expanding into estate planning because and that's a good segue into Capital Moms. We thought about all these women entrepreneurs that have businesses and no one talks about what happens if you pass away. And so for families, especially also families of color, that's something we kind of steer away from. We don't talk about estate planning. So we want to help to establish legacies through small business formation, leading to generational wealth, and also estate planning, protecting that generational wealth. So that's going to be an expansion into the end of 2023, 2024. So we'll be seeing a lot of new content and options available for wills and HIPAA authorizations, medical directives, power of attorneys, different types of deeds to transfer property while avoiding the estate probate process, which can be long and lengthy. And then for Capital Moms, that began because, again, we saw the challenges that mom entrepreneurs face with trying to find that balance. So Capital Moms is geared towards educating, empowering, and encouraging. Did I say that? Educating, empowering, encouraging other mom entrepreneurs. And so we have a book that released in December of last year, Capital Moms, A Firm Foundation for All Seasons of Entrepreneurship. And it kind of has 3 parts. So there's a practical part where we talk about our experience as moms and entrepreneurs. There's also a spiritual component because we include scripture. because we're both believers, and that's something that we choose not to extract from our entrepreneurship. And then it also has legal advice. So every chapter has a portion that will help you in establishing and maintaining your businesses. And it's written like in seasons. So winter, spring, summer, fall, where there's a different area of your business that you're focusing on that has, a corresponding month. So for example, in freedom, in July, we talk about freedom, which talks about your responsibility as a believer in the marketplace, that you have the freedom to make a difference. In October, like Halloween spooky, we talk about fear. And so you can find that on Amazon. That is where it's currently being shipped. And we're going to do a relaunch because the audiobook will be coming out at the end of the year.
How exciting.
Yeah. So we're currently, as a matter of fact, today I have to finish listening to the chapters to edit for the audiobook. The narrator sent them over to me, so I have to get her my notes back. But yes, the audiobook will be coming out. And then next year, we're hoping to do some conferences. And then my podcast, Rooted, is really my attempt to help people understand that Christ-centered growth can be practical. I try to take the spiritual and practical tips and put them together. So lately I've been doing a series, I think for like the past 2 months, called Fight Club, where we talk about conflict resolution and the roles that we can play in conflict, and how conflict doesn't have to be a bad word. It can just be an opportunity to expose some things we need to work on.
I love that.
I'm trying to break into coaching, and I say trying only because, as you know, I have a busy schedule. So
you do have a busy schedule.
I'm always like hesitant to put out there, because then like I want the influx, like who doesn't want opportunities? But I'm also very intentional about making sure I'm giving my best to whatever it is I'm invested in. So 2024 Rooted Coaching will officially launch. I have a few coaching clients now that I'm using as kind of a beta group to get my feet wet. And so I do have a masterclass that will be coming up on October the 10th. And so soon I'll be posting some things about that. And that is centered around reclaiming your main character energy, especially for women, how to be responsibly selfish.
I did not ask about that, but I look forward to hearing it during the masterclass.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be a nice intimate setting, and I'll be partnering with Moment Coaching, my friend Marissa, and I think it'll be good. I think women will really feel encouraged and inspired to be their very best selves without the pressure of comparison that we fall into.
That is so amazing. I'm fascinated by your story and the multifaceted life you've had, and I'm so excited for what the future will be for you, your clients, your podcast, your listeners, everything. One last question: how can you summarize your journey in one word?
Roller coaster, for sure.
Wow, and we leave it at that because we all understand what that means. And definitely we capture that feeling through your story. But Sheena, it's a pleasure having this conversation with you. I learned, I am inspired, I am encouraged. I look forward to more of your content.
Absolutely. Thank you.
For my audience, until next time, more to come with Unexpectedly Successful, a podcast.